predatory, and questionable publishing while protecting your reputation and also the funders' trust. Because institutions receive funding, trusting your credibility to publish in credible platforms. And we hope that when it comes to publishing choices, it will be the correct one so that it ensures that the publishing leads to successful outcomes, ensuring reliability and discoverability. Um, of course, none of us want to be in this picture, falling victim into a hidden trap. There are many examples how can a person, whether he's a starting scholar or even at the senior stage, may fall victim to the hidden traps of a predatory publishing. Some examples are the paper goes missing from the digital platform, where unaudited websites can remove content or fail to archive it, whereby journals which seems real, they tend to declare that it will be preserved, but it is not. So one way is to make sure that the website has some form of indication, such as citing clocks or portico, compliance to DOAJ guidelines, or open access publishing association criteria. If they did declare in their website, it showcased that there is more safety net in terms of the preservation of the content. Secondly is some errors. One day, if a researcher find that there's something in their manuscript they want to change, or there is some error and they want to inform the journal, can I correct the paper? Can I republish my paper? That option is not given. So this is due to the lack of peer review and a strong publishing ecosystem provided by the publisher themselves. So most trusted publisher, they provide this option. If there is changes in manuscript, for example, you want to update your affiliation, or you found there was something wrong with the published version of your manuscript, those changes can be supported by the publisher. But on a predatory case, often they don't provide this service. Thirdly, the victim or researcher is held hostage in this publishing scenario, where firstly, maybe they had already signed an agreement with the predatory publisher and that agreement cannot be withdrawn. Moreover, they are more committed to need to pay additional fees to fulfill that agreement. On the other hand, sometimes their intellectual property are kept at the control of the predators, in the sense that without realizing, once you sign the agreement and that paper gets published in that platform, you are unable to retract your publication. It becomes a permanent record. Lastly, is there are also researchers and authors who do not know at all they have fallen victim, purely innocent in the situations. They already have published in a variety of platforms which are deemed as not very credible and can be queried for its peer review standards. So they continue to, in fact, become part of the influencing agent. So researchers and authors who do not know they have fallen victim, they continue to publish, they invite other peers, they continue to be an agent of this ecosystem. So recovering as a victim is actually a very difficult journey to share. Firstly, is once a person becomes a party which is involved in the predatory publishing, he or she will need to re-establish their credibility as a researcher in science. As a whole, is almost starting from scratch. In a way, you need to make corrective actions to align to the policies and the standards of publishing and science. Secondly, is to reorganize your published article portfolio because your OSIT and your identity is linked to the published material, and it automatically may go to Google Scholar, for example. So when it comes to your citation count, the citation count will also involve the articles which is already published in those predatory platforms. So to have a genuine metric of your scholar performance, you will need to segregate the citation count of the one published in predatory and non-predatory. And this is a step that is not very pleasant to do because it's not easy. Third and fourth is that a person will start to discover that you will be surprised to know there are new skills that you would need to pick up because your manuscript was detected not up to a certain standard, but it was also published, versus publishing in a non-predatory platform where you do receive a timely, high standards peer review, which tackles every parts of your manuscript at the early start. So your development in research begins very early versus at the later stage. Fourth is that you need to reconnect with peers to provide you that support and also to move you out of that predatory ecosystem. And there are many ways publishers, librarians, universities give education in this, how to avoid all those risk and scenario. So some of you probably have heard of this, Think, Check, Submit. In fact, in our Springer Nature publishing talk, we always include this slide as well. But it's very important for me to share it here because ideally, this Think, Check, Submit is a framework. It's a standardized framework operated by an international organization. The website is thinkchecksubmit.org. And what it does is that it provides you a checklist to go through before you decide to submit a paper to any source or publisher. It is a reliable checklist. It provides a verified framework acceptable by all publishers. Additionally, the organizations provide support, more information, more training at their website. And there are also best practices that you can follow, examples and case studies that you can follow at their website. As a whole, the framework allows you to verify the publisher identity to ensure what peer review standards means and how to proceed when all those criteria are met. There are also other types of frameworks. In this one, this slide is, I would say, now is part of Springer Nature primary advice for all the researchers out there is to investigate, cross-check, and validate. So it's not really a matter of choosing one framework versus another. So if you do found a list, there are also a list of publishers which are found to be predators. So our stance is not to make you decide which framework you should choose, but ideally these are some of the best practices that you should consider when you want to submit your paper. So the first one, let's see if you want to investigate, if it's an open access publishing, you need to verify how it is deemed as open access. Is there a licensing transparency in those terms? And will the intellectual content be preserved according to open access criteria? So all publishers, the trusted one, large companies, have to comply to an open access scholarly publishing association criteria. Then only we can publish it as open access. Next is there are also signals in terms of indexing. Where is it indexed? Like JSTOR, PubMed, EBSCO, ProQuest, Web of Science, Scopus. So majority of the predatory journals, they love to index at open source database whereby they don't have to pay a fee. Because to operate as a publisher, a trusted large publisher, we need to pay out fees so that we can index your material at a reputable platform or database. So when I'm saying free, for example, or open source, mainly like Google Scholar, a lot of articles are great. They are credible at Google Scholar, but you will also still find some predatory material at Google Scholar because predator predatory publisher likes to link automatically those materials to Google Scholar because there is no fee, it's automatic, and it's easy for them. So there are many other websites or platform, but I'm not saying in particularly not to use Google Scholar. That is just one example of database that is preferred by the predatory publisher. Next is in terms of the publisher background and profile, are there sufficient description about how they perform their compliance and their management, if there is any ethical consideration when it comes to editorial or peer review? What are the policies and compliance channel that they follow? So at Springer Nature, for example, in our website, you will clearly find a variety of sections at our website mentioning how we deal with ethical issues when it considers peer review or editorial or publishing, what policy or compliance standards we adhere to. It's all clearly stated at our website. So this is expected of for a publishing house, a publishing company. Secondly, is the publisher a member? Have any membership or partnership with external auditors or bodies or agencies like COPE? Or do they have any claims about those memberships? So you need to also validate in case they do claim that they are a member. Lastly is to also validate, sorry, I want to hide my button. Okay, you need to validate the editor-in-chief and the current committee managing the journal. So for example, look into the profile and the list of the editorial board of that journal and ensure that that profile itself are people that are active in the research or academic space, and also look up at their recent publications in a way to gauge whether are they also a potential victim, because in case if we do detect that, oh, they have potentially published at one place where it seems not very credible, then you may be more cautious and careful, because the editor or peer reviewer or that editorial board will not know they have also fallen trap. So one thing to do is to also check their current status in their publication. What publishing legitimately means, because I have used the word legitimately other than predatory publishing. First is that your published paper does maintain record and compliance to the ethical review and integrity, research integrity. from the start to the end. So it can be trusted as a source that whereby the review is not just transparent in terms of the editorial process, but it complies in all areas of integrity check from submission to post publication. The published paper has also no queries for retraction, meaning for people to pull out that article from the platform or categorize it as a junk, a science which does not make sense, or rubbish, right? Junk science. So it makes sure that whatever is published would be trusted as a source that can be accountable. And thirdly, the paper has zero risk to credibility. It does not affect the reputation or the trust conduct of a researcher. And lastly, the published paper is very visible as a best practice of science, can be replicated in the research and publishing field, and can be trusted as an intellectual source to be shared and used openly. So often the published paper do not need much corrections. Once it's published, it stays there and it can be shared without any queries or risk to any party. So this is what publishing legitimately means. In a sense, it means that a party also has published successfully. On the other hand, what is predatory publishing? There are many definitions that differ across the field. So let me put my pointer. So most publishers often aim for financial results. They prioritize commercializing your paper for their own benefit, and also, in fact, to build up their publishing house. They take the profit so that they can continue to develop their publishing house, so that they can continue to deceive the way they conduct the publishing protocols. Then there are also definitions where it mentioned that predatory publishers are publishers which lack quality peer review and editorial standards. They provide substandard publishing review process, and often they miss out the copyright transfer and compliances to policies such as IJCME, EASE, and COPE. Like in Springer Nature, we have very strict compliance to majority of the international publishing standards, including COPE. As a whole, in the definition of Royal Society, which is an established society in research, and they support researchers all around the world, in the research integrity team of this organization, they define predatory publishing as institutions or entities which tends to emulate false information or misleading information to authors and researchers. And those information or practices deviates from the best editorial and publication practices. And this leads to a lack of transparency and sometimes aggressive or discriminative communication. So I will show you some examples later. On the other hand, there are many parties who are unknowingly involved in the predatory publishing field. involved in the sense whether they know or do not know. And as a whole, everyone plays a role to support one another so that no one can fall prey as a victim. So, conference organizer, publishers themselves, professional societies, third party agents, or manuscript producers. So, this is the most recent one where you would find agents helping to write out manuscripts and then giving promises that those manuscripts that they produce on your behalf would be published in a certain journal. Then there are also peer reviews, editors, researchers, institutions. Institutions can come from university or even small companies or societies which are not even um, audited. For example, a lot of association and societies, they need to be registered. So there are some societies out there where they are not registered, but they may operate in a unethical way. So then there's ethic committees, but some of these agents are also, I would say, they are not knowing, they are accidentally involved in the predatory publishing ecosystem. For example, ethic committees, publisher ourselves, Springer Nature. In fact, we have been cited or copied. Our logo has been copied, for example, by other people. So things like this, and I will give you more examples at the later stage. So this diagram is to showcase to you that we have a shared responsibility. Everyone have a shared responsibility to help one another. One thing, to secure research integrity, but to make sure that no one will fall victim to predatory publishing. So why this is important? There are many reasons other than the one that I described at the early start, is that is for the excellent standards, the ethical conduct in scientific publishing. We want papers and good science, papers with performance, with metrics. You will find a lot of predatory platforms. They fail to provide the metrics, the citation count, how many people have downloaded or accessed the material. They may provide how many people have visited the website or click on a page, but not in particularly the article itself. So this is one of the indicator. Lastly is to protect our credibility as an author. And a lot of individuals tend to fall victim by all these simple factors. The pressure to publish quickly and easily, due to technological developments, perhaps AI itself accidentally transfer you to a source or platform to submit your manuscript, for example. There are also friendly APC models, article processing models, or low cost fee that may sound very attractive to a researcher, or invited by other peers who do not know that that platform is a predatory publishing. Or on the other hand, coerced by promises and offering. For example, maybe there's a promise editing or enhancement they will do to your manuscript during the peer review, or there's an award. The most common one is award. They promise to give you best paper award or best author if you submit the paper. So other than that, there's often two types of starting scenarios, which leads to a point where a researcher or author will find there's a critical need to re-evaluate and identify red flags of a potential predator. The first scenario is when the author or the researcher become the initiator, meaning you are the first person to, to want to submit the manuscript. You are the one that start the action first. So if you are the first person to go to submit the manuscript, the first thing is to familiar with the process of submitting via the publishing platform and tools. So for example, at Springer Nature, it is very clear for all journal paper, you have to go to the journal homepage and click on the icon submit manuscript. Once you click on the icon submit manuscript, you create an account and then you upload your details and file, and that account will help you to track your submission status. So similarly, this should also apply at some form of similarities to all other publishers. On the other hand, there are also other cases where some publisher require you to submit the manuscript to an outsourced platform. It could be a platform where they are in partnership with. So you can validate that platform first before you submit there. So when you do submit, make sure that all these three areas are ticked off, making sure that there will be a paper ID and affiliated to the journal ID and an online account with your username to track the submission, that you also have the option to communicate directly with the editor-in-chief. So all journal homepage should show the editor-in-chief contact, the email, for you to reach out to them for any matters. And there's also a clear information about the median time of it takes for the editor to come back to you about the decision, the median time of the article being accepted to publish, what is the current series or the historical volume of an ebook, for example, and is there a deadline to submit? Ideally, there should be a deadline. And is there any journal updates, in the sense that that journal always showcase information where there's new updates or maybe a call for paper or new changes in the journal. Secondly, what are the fee and publishing policies? Is it clearly stated at the early stage and at the journal homepage as well? Now, ideally, every trusted publisher, the large ones worldwide, each journal will have its own APC. There may be some journals where the APC is same as the rest in terms of its title, but it will only be same normally if it falls under the same subject field. So what I'm trying to say is, when you go to the journal homepage, there would be a section indicating clearly what is the APC charges for this journal title. So if you do not find the APC, then the next step is to clarify with the editor-in-chief or the publishing director. Sometimes there will be a publishing director contact who is managing that journal. There are only exceptional cases where APC is not stated. Maybe due to the case the journal is brand new, or there are still ongoing changes. But for a journal that is claimed to be well established, for example, maybe a publisher claimed that this journal is Q1, Q2, highly ranked with a highly cited journal, meaning this journal has operated for a long time. So there should be a APC for that journal title itself. And next is there should be also a license agreement applicable to the researcher and author. However, this license agreement will only be known when you submit your paper. After you submit the paper, the publisher will send you, whether by email or through the platform you submitted, the license agreement that you should sign. So read through that license agreement, whether it makes sense to you, what are the terms. And next is when you do go through all these steps, the most last signal to know whether a publisher is predator or not is, do they request a complete detail from you? For example, in case you know you did not provide information about your affiliation, the location of your affiliation, for example, maybe you just put University Putra Malaysia dot, you didn't put comma Malaysia. Most trusted publisher need a full complete information. We not only need your name of affiliation, we need your location, your country. We also need your OSIT ID and the address of your affiliation. On the second scenario, what if the author is invited to submit or email the manuscript? The second scenario is now you are not the one that started the initiative first. Someone else, another party, influence you or try to invite you to please submit the paper. Firstly, is to be familiar with the context of the invite and what is the intention of the invite. Next is to check the messenger, inspect the email domain, their signature, any link they provide, and avoid any potential shared URL. Some of the URL that they share can be a clickbait. When you click on that URL, it leads to a platform which may be dangerous. It may solicit information from you, or it may lead you automatically to a source that may seem not trustworthy. And next is that how is the communication being made? Is there a repetitive generic invite or off-topic solicitation, meaning after they send you one email, they send you another email which is off-topic just to build that relationship with you? Is the email very regular? They email you in January and then March, they email you again after 2 months. So ideally, a lot of the trusted publisher, we invest in different methods in sharing our call for paper. So not many trusted publisher tend to email directly a researcher one-to-one. For example, you receive an email from Springer Nature in January, please submit to this paper. And then March, after 2 more months, please submit to your paper again. Quite rare. Rarely this happens. The channel we choose is different. So we have to validate who is communicating that message and always check with the journal board the best is editor-in-chief or check the website. Go back to the journal website whether the call for paper really exists and what is the real situation. Lastly, is the call for paper matching to your field? I will show you in the next example. There are real emails where they send the invite, the article that you work on is actually not fitting the aim and scope of the journal, but they still invite you. So this is a red flag as well. So this is one example of a predator email. Of course, the name, the persona are confidential. It has been changed to protect the party. But ideally, this is the context example. So one is you receive an email from an unfamiliar source. The domain itself may not be connected to a publisher. So one way is to see the name of the domain. Does it exist and match the publisher? And this one as well. When you receive an email, if it's asking you, should you report it as a spam, that means the email provider has actually detected that this email could be a illegitimate source or communicator or has been reported as a spam by other people. So all email provider function that way. If they recommend you, will you like to report this as a spam? They are just double checking whether this email is actually a spam. So it's a small flag. So you need to go through properly if you do see this. And thirdly, the greetings. What is the best salutation for your position? For example, did they greet you by the correct name or the salutation? If, let's say, you are not yet a graduate, but they already saluted you as a lecturer, a professor, it can be also a red flag because they are overinflating your position. Maybe you are not a professor, you are just a doctor, perhaps, or even just a student. Next is the journal is unfamiliar to you. They start off the email without introducing their profile or background. They jump off to a very short context to inform you that there is a journal title with this ISSN and please submit. But they did not introduce themselves first. Lastly is very pushy. They ask you to submit within a short timeline, within 24 hours. So this is a clear indicator because majority of the invites or call for paper will give you enough time to prepare your manuscript, not to rush you to submit. And sycophantic means that the text or the message in the email, as you can see here, is stated for someone of your caliber. You will always be available to help us. So this kind of statement is not very irregularly used by a publisher agent who is asking for opinions, comment, or submission. So this one is statements which are not really necessary in an email or in a communication. There are also other real cases. This is another real one. For example, dear Dr. Ida, Did you get my last email? We hereby forward it again. Please kindly confirm receipt. This is a reminder email. If you or your colleagues or friends have any unpublished paper, please kindly submit it by email attachment. Looking forward to hearing from you soon. It looks great, short, concise, a typical email an editor-in-chief may send with the address and telephone number. But one red flag is that this one, if you or your colleague have any unpublished paper, if an editor or the editorial committee is sending an invite, genuinely sending an invite to you to submit a paper, ideally it should only involve you as an author. Maybe if you and your team perhaps have an existing manuscript. And in fact, they won't really emphasize on this unpublished paper. The word unpublished paper is not a common term used by editor or committee which is inviting someone to submit. These kind of statements are created intently to entice you to submit a paper that is not yet published and also to invite other people to join in. Next is submit them by email. If any editor or committee asks you to write or submit by email, you need to clarify with them first what is the next step. If you submit by email, what is going to happen to your manuscript? Does it goes to peer review? How can you track the process, the status? So these are things you need to clarify. It's a real red flag because submitting by email, it only goes to a general party or one party. Next is there is also other examples where the communicator may highlight the email section as red. So you see, here is the same context, but they highlight it red color to emphasize to you as a recipient, please submit your paper that is unpublished to us. And they also emphasize on the type of topics that you can submit for the paper. Majority of the predatory publisher will provide you the ISSN, the DOI of the paper, where they get the paper that you work on from. Maybe they have been eyeing your paper at the conference that you recently presented. So after you present at the conference, they approach you. They ask you to please submit your conference paper to our journal. So one problem is that paper potentially has been already published as a conference paper. So if you as an author, you know that paper is already a conference paper, it should not be republished as a journal paper. That is not allowed because all conference paper would be provided a DOI as well, and you cannot have two DOI for one same manuscript. Why suddenly other paper as well? So why is it in an email? Firstly, they were interested in this conference paper, but now they are also asking me if I have other unpublished paper in all of these topics. So very rare, a trusted publisher will approach you in such way. It seems like they want any paper from you. Very rare. Publisher take a manuscript seriously, a manuscript that is credible and fitting the aim and scope of the journal. So they will not open up the a variety of options for you at the early start. A publisher or editorial committee will be very specific with the direction of your manuscript. If they see this is the manuscript, then this is the journal you should submit. So be cautious if many options are given to you at the early start. It seems like there is no direction from the journal or from the committee. Another red flag, when you scroll down the email that was sent to Dr. Ida, when you scroll down, it's the same email. They may say that, oh, send the full paper to all this email, which does not make sense. How come you must send your manuscript to a variety of email, including an email which is Gmail and Hotmail, which is an open source email provider? And then sometimes they also give you the option to submit now to this URL. So best is to hover your mouse over the URL first, and at the left bottom, you would see where does this URL take you to, what website. You don't click on it first, you hover over it for safety reasons. And last is here they say, we provide you all these benefits. Sounds good, all these benefits, but read carefully. They also will edit your paper, but you should pay some fee to us. So this is a phishing technique. They're trying to fish for your paper in the sense that they promise to edit your paper, but as long as you pay the fee to us. So this kind of communication is not the common way of influencing an author to submit the manuscript to a journal from a trusted publisher. Trusted publisher do not do this. Other example of red flags is when you scroll down the email or communication, or if you go to the website of that journal, there is like endless lists, more than 30 of indexing, a lot, more than 30. And you don't even know some of the indexing. Maybe you never heard of it before, or you couldn't find it online. So this is a real red flag. It's a long list. So most trusted publisher only provide the one that really exists, that you can find online, and the most important ones, for example, like Scopus, which is widely used, or Web of Science. There is no deadline for submission. It's a red flag. Why no deadline? You have to validate and verify with the editor, or the deadline is too short. It's also a red flag. They are rushing you to submit. And lastly, the fee for publishing in a journal or ebook is not disclosed at an early start. So if it's not disclosed at the early start, it is a concerning matter. So the APC should be known to you at the early stage before you submit, before you commit. This is another example of a real email whereby the title is changed. They tend to provide you the title of the journal with the ISSN, and the yellow highlight showcase where is the problem is. One is a professional journal. Most trusted company, we don't put an adjective to ourselves. We may use the adjective to describe um, a journal which can be tracked of its performance. But if the journal has no metrics, we don't just put an adjective to showcase that we are really professional, for example. And then we put the company name and the location. This is quite subjective, but like for Springer Nature case, because Springer Nature is an international company, we don't put the country. We just put Springer Nature, for example, or Springer Nature Limited, for example. Because Springer Nature is a global company, we are not confined to US, to Germany, to China, for example. Very rare. Next is very interested in your paper and want to publish in the Journal of Management Science. So you need to check where is this Journal of Management Science is. Does it exist? Has it been cited by others? What is the performance? And they're asking you to attach your manuscript through this email. What is the next step if I attach in my email? That is something you need to check. All of your original paper and books which have not been published are welcome. Again, this kind of statements are not aligned to the main objective or intention of the message. Firstly, they said that they are interested, very interested in this paper, the meta-analysis paper. But then in the next statement, they're asking also for all other papers or even books. You are asking me to submit to a journal, but now you're also asking for a manuscript for ebooks. So this is a real red flag. You're asking for more beyond the topic or main subject of the email. And last is as an American publishing group, we wish to become your friends if necessary. So this is not a make-up statement. These are real statements that some institution or entity will write. We also want to invite some people to be our reviewer or become our editorial board member. So they also may suggest that would you like to become a reviewer or become an editorial board member? It seems that the email and the context went out of the topic of trying to ask you to submit a manuscript at the first start. And on the other hand, they are asking you to also become a reviewer if you know that you don't have the experience yet. You know you haven't been doing any reviews, you haven't been an editorial board, but they invite you. That is also a red flag. Another red flag, a common one, is perhaps the email is very well put. They provide you the metrics, the URL, the website, and it's short and concise. It's very specific to the objective. They may put this kind of very attractive title, Simago Q4 or Q1 journal, invite to publish. So this is a real hook by predatory journals. For large companies, large publisher, also quite rare that we send out invites by tier of journals. For example, Q1, Q2, Q3, invite to publish. Very rare a publisher, the majority of the large ones, including Springer Nature, will do that because we try not to emphasize our tier of journals when we call out the manuscript. On the other hand, we also rarely emphasize on the indexing, because we want to give equity to all the indexes and database that we have agree with and license to publish at those platforms. We give fairness to everyone. So perhaps it will be a very generic title, or a title that is very straightforward, such as call for paper and what is the journal. So it's not direct to the performance or the brand or the indexing. Some other tips moving forward. In the meantime, if any of the audience have a question, feel free to type in the chat box, because we will address those questions later. And I will carry on now with my presentation. Assuming the librarians have not yet pulled out those questions for me to address. So one here is the image, is that you find a happy man hearing about open access, hearing about OA. And researchers now are very happy about this, because OA means any party can download, access, or use your article. There is no paywall to read your article, and that leads to citations. So there are some risks in this. Firstly, while open access is a very legitimate term that becomes attractive to authors, it is also often misused by predators. For example, the open access terms are not specified clearly or audited by publishing standards. Right now, at Springer Nature, we have pushed a lot of initiative in open access. We are one of the leading publishers, backed up by our recent 2024 open access report, that majority of our open access article leads to double or triple citation impact for the researchers. And we will also have set up a model for researchers to submit their article through the transformative model, so that their APC can be covered by the library or by the institution. So all this model and open access licensing, the license for the author to publish as open access, has some form of safety net protection. When you choose to submit your manuscript to publish as open access, there will be an agreement, there will be a terms for you to comply to and for you to agree with, to give us permission to publish it as open access. And all this agreement is also part of the criteria that a publisher choose to comply to. So for example, we comply to DOAJ and OASPA, Open Access Scientific Publishing Association criteria. So if you do found any platform which, number one, do not have those terms, do not have those agreements, and number two, do not articulate how are they conducting the open access publishing licensing, and how or who they comply to, that can be another red flag. So it's not a matter of open access publishing is a problem. It's not that. It is a matter that it is being misused by predators, whereby it poses a risk to authors or researchers if they fall trap to a very poorly structured ecosystem or a poor model of open access that is not audited or not compliant to standards. Okay, so I have emphasized this. This slide of copy will be given to you after the presentation, so you can read for more information about how Springer Nature conduct our open access routes, for example. And you will be surprised to know, for example, a lot of articles which have been published through the predatory platforms, and they promise it to be open access, anyone can download, unfortunately does not lead to the positive outcomes that is desired. Meaning there is no impact, not much impact, or impact with which can be cited as credible. For example, Dimensions, the website dimensions.ai cannot trace the downloads or the impact of citations of those articles that has been published. But for Springer Nature case, our open access article can be traced in a transparent way and in a trusted channel. Another example, as this image show, is like a chameleon. Chameleon is a type or species that tends to change colors when they blend into an environment. So for example, it's changing to the green leaf because it's attached to the green leaf. So there are people that act like chameleon as pretentious authority in publishing. How so? They impersonate as the publisher that is credible. So yes, unfortunately, myself, I have seen or witnessed real cases where there are announcements, call for papers, they make a nice poster, they put Springer Nature logo in the poster, or even other publisher. Sometimes they may just copy the journal title and assume to be that authority acting on behalf of that publisher. Why they want to do that? There's also cases of paper milling, or we call it as replicating the research. People are finding articles to replicate. So to do that, they create a call for paper similar or pretending to be that publisher, so they can replicate whatever articles that has been received. Other traps is that the use on unaffiliated emails. You would see unusual typography in the email, pretending to be the editor or chief editor. Not just the domain name, but maybe they put the real name of the editor, but they put a symbol or alphabet, extra alphabet in the email, assuming to be the professional person. There are also unusual announcements in the website. Perhaps they announce it not at the university website or not at a credible platform. They use social media. They tend to focus on social media. They use TikTok or Instagram. Next is, there is no news from the peer reviewer or editor. For example, when you submit the paper, the paper went through, but you hear nothing, no response. And you try to contact the editor or the editorial board, they don't respond to you. That can be a red flag. Another thing is you do get a response, but the response are not objective enough to what you are addressing. So this reference give you the notes that has been inserted here, where this information is sourced from, is from this article. Next is there are cases also where conference organizer assume to help you to publish those article at that publisher. I would say don't be too afraid of this. There are a handful that are predators, but there are a lot that is real. So, for example, if you are in UPM, you see UPM posted a conference and they say, oh, we will submit your conference paper to a journal at Springer Nature or another company. That could be highly real because it's coming from the university itself as well. But if you do find one conference organizer, you see that they organize many conference. There's a conference at the first week of January, then the last week of January, there's another conference by the same committee. They only change the title. Not only that, they do conference series, like they do conference in different subjects, one whole whole variety of subjects at the first quarter of the year. This is very rare. A legitimate conference organizer would take time to organize different conference team or different conference subject. It will not happen in such a short timeline. So be wary of those because they tend to promise to transfer your paper to a journal or to a established publisher. So make sure there's a clear indication of how they operate their company or their website or their conferences. And how is it they promise that there is a best paper award, but the award is not clearly specified. What are the criteria? So sometimes there's a best poster, best paper, but the criteria is not there. So that is another fishing hook to influence you to submit the paper. And lastly, the editorial committee is not developed. You go to the website of the conference, there's no editorial committee, and neither you can detect who are these people is. Moving forward, I will try to speed up. Like in this image, some publishers, predatory publisher, fall back on their performances. Like a brown bear, it tends to hibernate in a certain period. Firstly, is that the title, the journal title, or the volume or ebook series only happen for a short time. For example, in January, you see there is this volume 5. Then in June, you see volume 5 again. December, volume 5. Next year, volume 5. Forever is at volume 5. So that is something to be cautious of. You see the journal is not moving forward. Next is, or not maybe, you see that the ebook series only happens one. Ebook series normally should be quite a long term. It should not just happen once. So, like for example, in Springer Nature, we have a variety of series, like the climate change series, sustainability series, technology series, and under those series, there are many topics to discover. So our series will never end. So what if you find a platform, it says, oh, we have artificial intelligence series, but the submission of manuscript only happen for 1 year or 2 years. That is also a red flag, very short. So ideally, a series should be much longer. Next is, you see that there's repeated calls for papers. Also a red flag because it means that that journal or ebook is incompetent. Incompetent in the sense that it was not gathering quality articles enough to sustain or maintain that journal. And it does affect the credibility of how that journal or ebook is being managed. On the other hand, it is being very highly selective of the article, in the sense that maybe there are cases where article was given to the board, given to the peer reviewer, but something went wrong. Something very bad went wrong that it leads that journal cannot publish the article. Next is this one I have mentioned. The author received no response or incomplete comments, in the way that when you receive the comments of your manuscript, it is not rational or justifiable. It is a comment that is very accusatory or discriminative, or it can be a comment not related to your work, or it could be a very just general comment. Your article was rejected due to a certain reason, and they don't provide you any further action, recommended further action. Like, do you need to enhance the manuscript, or should you submit to another journal? Does your paper get transferred to another journal? So, for example, at Springer Nature, most of our editor and peer review should give constructive feedback. The feedback that you get should be constructive. How you can enhance the manuscript, or is a manuscript transferred to another journal, or should you do something in order for your manuscript to be reconsidered. Another red flag is that the author is not fully guided at the end. So once it's rejected, you totally lost touch with the publisher. So you already kind of given your manuscript, disclose your work to another party, and after that, the publisher totally closed off, even though they reject. That means no one from that publisher or editorial committee continue to communicate with you, even if you reach out to them. That is also a red flag, because that shouldn't be the case. Even if there's a rejection, they should leave some door open to keep in touch with you if in case you have any clarifications or further surveys you require. Other indicator is that please note that it does not mean that an article that is indexed in Scopus or credible database can also be found as a predatory journal. So there are some articles which are indexed in Scopus or in a credible database, but unfortunately, it is also a predatory journal publisher. This is hard to detect, so we wouldn't recommend that this becomes a first criteria when you want to cross-check. So it is okay to ensure what database it is linked to, but it should not be the only primary criteria when you want to cross-check whether this is a legitimate publisher or not. You should cross-check with all other indicators and the flag that I have shared earlier. Other scenarios of concern, like the signboard here, where there is no signs, it's not clear, you cannot see, it's very blur, is all this. So I recommend the audience to go through this slide. I will cover a few here due to the time frame. First is that the website is very elaborate, lengthy in description. If you go to the publisher website, you find it's all words, statements, and there is no clear information about how they operate their company, their publishing company, what are their range of products they offered, and how do they trace the performance of the products, how do they conduct their compliances, their ethical concerns. All these informations are missing. In fact, there is also no information about who is using their product. Is there any testimonials that is real, or a blog post? So it's missing. Uh, Often a predatory publisher, they will design a very simple website. A simple website that only showcase to a user or an audience, please submit your manuscript, pay this amount of money, and please submit your manuscript in all these variety of topics, because our journal is very good. They will state all this. They will just keep the website like that in a very simple way. But a real publisher will have more than that. It's not just about submitting your manuscript or paying the fee. There are many other services and maintenance that is clearly shown. Secondly, is that check first at the website where the conference organizer is, how they will handle the submitted manuscript. Is there a workflow they have shown how they will handle the manuscript once you submit to the conference? And check whether is there any similar conference that was successful in the past. Did they conduct any events or conference that were successful in the past, and they had successfully published those articles they promised to a journal? Try to find, okay, there's a speaker in this topic. Did that speaker ultimately publish in a journal as promised? And if there are awards, where are the criteria? Look out everywhere for mentions or referrals of the journal and ebook source. So search online as much as possible. Are there any other party talking about that journal title, talking about that publisher, which you have found or have invited you? Should you be worried about the aim and scope? For example, the aim and scope is not just a matter about your manuscript fitting the journal, but does the current editorial board, if you look at the list and you look at their background, is the editorial board also fitting the journal aim and scope? So a predatory publisher would often have a variety of editorial committee, which sometimes does not have the experience of the subject matter. In exception, there are some journals which are multidisciplinary. If a journal is not multidisciplinary, it's very specific, then you know you need a large pool of committee which have high expertise in that subject field. Lastly, is you yourself as the author or researcher know that you are very honest. You know that truly when you prepared a manuscript, what was involved in that manuscript. For example, you know that you have run the manuscript to an AI checker, and the AI checker detected more than 25% of that manuscript is AI written or AI generated. But you continue to submit that manuscript even though the AI checker you have found is more than 25%. And that manuscript got accepted. In this case, it's not really a matter of error or technical error. It could be an indicator that there's a mislook in the peer review. So peer review or that process of checking by the publisher. So at Springer Nature case, for example, we are very, very strict when it comes to AI generated content. It's very automatically detected. We can know So that maintains a high standard of review when we accept a manuscript. Another one is that maybe the citation or bibliography list, you know that you personally know that there is actually some reference that does not exist, or the title or DOI does not match, but you are desperate. You just want to submit the manuscript because you need the reference, and the manuscript was accepted to publish. This is also another overlook situation. Majority of peer review and editor, they study the reference list and the in-text citation. They do check. So if there is a substandard peer review, that can affect the long-term outcome of your manuscript and your reputation. So please be careful, and um, if you are aware yourself that actually my manuscript there is a flaw, but you submit and it got accepted, then you can ask the second question: how was the peer review conducted, and is this actually okay or not okay? So the last, oh, the okay, it's okay. The answer is here. It was supposed to be an animated slide. Nevertheless, the last slide shows some reflection. It's a question and answer about a situation that if you were invited to join the editorial board, whereby you are surprised because you are only starting your career and you have no relationship to this journal, what you should do. So the option is B, C, and E. You can ask your colleague, discuss with your colleague, verify who the publisher is, take a look at the website, the editorial board, where the journal is indexed. And E, it's okay to reply to the email inquiring for further information and ask for more transparency of how they conduct that journal. Lastly, Springer Nature provide additional courses in research integrity and predatory publishing. So there will be links to submit, no, the links to submit your information, your account, to register to be able to participate in the courses. So these are some of the courses that you can participate. There's one in paper milling and predatory, provided for free by Springer Nature. So next is I give the floor of presentation to my colleague Ken Yip to carry on. And Ken, will you like me to click for you the
It's
slide?
okay, Shen. I'll just take over the screen and carry on from here to the same slide.
Okay,
Thanks.
sure.
Thank you, Shen. So yeah, just want to say hello to everyone. My name is Kent, licensing manager for Springer Nature here in Malaysia. And I want to thank Shen again for a very, very insightful presentation. I think you've shared quite a lot of very, very detailed information, Shen, that are super valuable for everyone to actually see real life cases. And that's, I think, something that is invaluable. And for the rest of I think I'll just take another 10, 15 minutes to close up and to summarize, in a sense, what you've just heard from my colleague about this topic in predatory publishing. And mine will be a little bit more summarizing or looking at the bigger picture, but essentially, hopefully at the end of this session, you'll have a better idea on what to avoid, what are the things you ought to do, what are the best practices. But it's also important to acknowledge that this whole topic about predatory publishing is not new, it's not unique, and it's certainly not isolated to just a small segment of the author or researcher population. It doesn't matter if it's in your institution or in Malaysia or all around the world. It happens, and can happen to anyone, really. In fact, it doesn't matter if you're a new, inexperienced researcher or a very seasoned professor. I've personally heard of stories and testimonies where the whole range of people who have fallen prey to basically predatory publishing, not knowing they have succumbed to the scam in that sense. And it's not because they didn't try, but sometimes the trick is so elaborate, and you are busy people. You do have other things to do, and even after you've taken the necessary precautions, sometimes luck just befalls upon us in that sense. So it's not really your fault, but what we're trying to say is that it is something that we have to live with in the industry. Of course, everyone is doing their part to stamp it out, including your university and your library, and which is why they have organized sessions like this today. And I believe there are many more preventive measures that perhaps, for example, your supervisors, your research management centers have taken up in order to minimize or to prevent any of you from falling prey to those to predatory publishing. And in fact, even big companies and publishers like us are also exposed to the risk of paper mills and whatnot. And this is not because publishers like Springer Nature or any other well-known and reputable publisher are not taking the necessary steps to prevent it, or don't have the resources like, for example, smaller publishing houses. It's just the way that the ecosystem is set up, in the sense that there are many stakeholders in the whole ecosystem. A lot of it is, of course, dependent on trust, and reputation, and sometimes individuals within the system become greedy and have ulterior motives, and therefore betray the system that we live in. But of course, that is just a very small, I'm sure it is just a very small minority of the greater ecosystem, including the likes of yourselves, that all want to just basically adhere to the correct ways of doing something. So one way, I think, to perhaps summarize some of the things that Shen has spoken about in the last hour, is that, like any other scam, the key to identifying a scam is basically to see what the end goal is of that scam. And if you always put on a hat to be suspicious, making sure you question every move, every motive, every communication that you get, every step you've been asked to do, that helps to put you on the defensive mode in that sense. And always, making sure that you are in the position to protect your work. So, for many of you, if not all of you, the work that you put in, the effort, the long hours in the labs or going out into the field and doing your surveys and experiments, you want to protect that work. So take every precaution necessary, and just like, I think this is common now, think, check before submitting, and making sure that you've ticked every box. You've made sure you've checked everything you could possibly check before you've taken the decision to submit something, to provide some information, to upload something somewhere. Always come from that perspective. So this is not something unique to publishing, of course. It's the same kind of mindset that you take with looking after your finances, and not clicking on weird emails that you get in your inbox. And it's the same, just having that whole defensive mindset. And one thing that we also try to point out is that at Springer Nature, we try to gain the trust of authors in the right way, by being transparent and upfront about our policies, just like what Shen has mentioned earlier as well. Reputable publishers, we tell you what it is straight away. We don't need to hide things, and I'm not saying that the predatory journals or people running this kind of organizations, nefarious organizations, don't do the same, but they try to mask it. And once you dig deeper, for example, once you click into the certain links on the website, you will realize that things don't appear, the website link isn't working, because it's all very surface level only. But if you really study things like policy documents from big publishers or well-known established publishing houses, journals that have been around for a really long time, and you can see there's regular updates, and a lot of your community and peers are actively engaging with that title, then that's usually a good sign. So, for us at Springer Nature, you can find a lot of information viably and easily accessible on different parts of the website. You can engage with employees of Springer Nature, just like myself and Chen here today. You may meet our counterparts, our editors, for example, at conferences that you participate in. You're just able to get a sense that real publishers, legitimate publishers, are present. They're legitimate. They are there in the marketplace. You can see us. You can question us. You can interact with us to give you a sense of that security. And examples of how we try to portray our information as publicly as possible. I think Shen talked about the differences between open access publishing and non-open access publishing. What you're seeing on the screen here is an example of two different types of journals. And these are screenshots of the homepage of the journal. The journal on the left, Artificial Intelligence Review, is a fully open access journal, which means immediately if you're trying to submit to this journal, you will know there is some kind of APC charge that you will run into. And this is all made available and told to you upfront. You will be informed of this. There's information for you there to read. And you should be well aware going or attempting to submit into this. And likewise for our other types of journals, for example, hybrids, whereby if you read the aims and scope, you look at the editorial board information, you look at the editorial policies, you check the submission guidelines, what are the fees and fundings if applied for open access or not open access, for color charges, miscellaneous charges, whatsoever. Everything should be there on the website, clearly laid out for you, so that you can make an informed decision on what you want to do next. There is, in no ways should be a sense of soliciting from you, meaning the information is there, you go to it, you are looking at it, you then make the decision of whether or not you trust this information, but never in most cases is the journal actively trying to pull you in. And it's not in the sense, not in the form of them, for example, calling for papers. They can do that. They will do that sometimes, especially for very new journals that are looking for a community to develop. But they do so in, again, very transparent and open fashion that never is really soliciting or trying to corner you secretively or individually. And then trying to gain something out of you, usually in the sense of either your work itself, your data, or from a financial standpoint. So, for example, for that hybrid journal that I showed earlier, if you check the funding site page for that journal, if you put in your university name, for example, you will see if there are funding arrangements clearly laid out between your university or your organization with us. In this case, this hybrid journal, there is a funding arrangement through the transformative agreement that, again, Shen touched on earlier, to help cover the APC fees that are valued at over 4,000 euros for this journal. So if you can see below, the essential step section, essentially it tells you step by step what you are supposed to anticipate, what you're expected to see, how you are supposed to go about the whole process, and it tells you that information on what are your options are very clearly upfront. So you're never left in a situation of being in the lurch, meaning you should always know what you to expect if you're ever going to be requested to pay something or to submit something or to adhere to a certain guideline or protocol. That, again, should be very clearly laid out. I know, for many of you, especially for young researchers, tilling through such detailed information, especially if you're looking at tens of different journals from different publishers, can be a bit laborious. But this is actually where you put in the work to actually try to safeguard your work itself. So you don't want to be in a position where you spend 2-3 years or however so long putting in the effort to do the experiments, to write your thesis, and then losing it really at the last step itself. Next advice I think we can give to summarize basically to work together as a community. So in the community, in the sense, what I'm trying to say is you as individual researchers or students or authors yourselves working together with your supervisors, your seniors, your lab mates, your mentors in the field, and of course your library as well. That they would have a lot of information, and actually one of the main advantages that your library often has is the relationship with publishers themselves. So you can always leverage on that. And of course, when you go out into the market, when you go out into conferences, for example, you will be able to meet with different researchers, your counterparts from different parts of the world, from different organizations. You'll be able to interact with them, understand from them, learn from them in the sense of what are good options for you, which journals, which titles are the best or are really good options for young researchers for a certain topic, where are the best options for you to publish your conference proceedings, whatsoever. So being able to develop that relationship, build your network in amongst all of the different stakeholders that you participate in this academic publishing industry, in the research industry, would definitely sit you well in the long term as well. And just to touch on a little bit as well, this is maybe not directly contributing to, or not say contributing, but not directly as a means of. I'm not saying AI, for example, is the cause of predatory publishing, but it may become a means of which how you can be taken advantage of. So, for example, what is already prevalent, especially from an author standpoint, and now, especially these days, with the advent of generative AI and soon to be agentic AI, there are a lot of already services that can be found in the marketplace, online especially. You can have things like assistive writing, manuscript editing, workflow management, to creating images for illustration for your works. All of this is already here, right? It's not something that is to come in the future. All of this is already now here available. And many of you, I am sure, are already utilizing some form of AI in the work that you do on a daily basis. And even publishers like ourselves use a certain type or a form of AI. We use it to, for example, to conduct mass screening for plagiarisms. I think this is, quite commonplace now. We also use it to manage metadata, especially for large publishers that manage thousands of journals. And of course, when we work with peer reviewers, we also try to provide tools for them, safe tools, to help with proofreading and whatnot. So in that sense, inevitably, AI is prevalent, and AI will be used, and it's not something that it will be stopped or can be stopped, basically. But that then leads to it being the open door, or rather opening the door for abuse, to circumvent the safeguards of the ecosystem that I talked about earlier, that are set up in a way to protect authors. So, there are things that, like, for example, copyright infringement, inaccurate attribution of authorship, using generative AI images in your actual manuscript for publication, whereby it doesn't relate to the work itself. All of these are potential ways how AI can contribute, not necessarily directly to predatory publishing, but definitely plays a role and a part in it. So, which is why, Springer Nature, and again, many, if not all, reputable publishers, even your university, has some kind of policy about this. I'm sure that helps to manage the use of AI rather than telling you outright you can't use it, because that's just not practical. And of course, today when we're chasing performance outcomes, we're chasing more efficiencies and whatnot, AI is definitely going to be present and going to be present for the future, remaining future. So if you're interested to read about what Springer Nature's stance on AI in academic publishing, we actually have a web page on our site that basically details what our stance are on it, and there are a few to summarize. And basically, is that at the current forms of these AIs, or your Chat GPTs and whatnot, Claude AI and other LLMs, right now they just still don't necessarily conform to satisfy our definition of authors. So you cannot attribute authorship to an AI or to an LLM. And what that basically means is you shouldn't be using AI to then first develop from scratch, from nothing, your work, and then you then modify that work. Because if you do so, then in practical sense, you should then be attributing authorship to that AI instead of yourself. But because we can't accept that, and therefore, if you want to publish with us, for example, our stance is that it cannot be done in that sense, right? So on the flip side, it doesn't also mean that LLMs are not allowed. Like I said, we ourselves are using it in different ways, in fashions, and different models. But it has to be done in a safe and managed and limited way. And of course, within the context of publishing, that it has to be documented somewhere. So if you're ever going to utilize AI in what you do in your work, then you should then say how you have utilized it, for which portion, and why you have done so, etc., etc., etc. And ultimately, the whole goal, at least for this where we are right now in time, is that the work should always be human work, but then improved by AI instead of the other way around. And one thing that I've also found interesting to touch on, and something that has really caught on, perhaps at least in the last, you can say, 5 years, last decade or so, is um, external support from third parties or companies that offer services like, for example, proofreading. I'm sorry, proofreading, or help you to improve your manuscript that you've already written. So there are many of these companies out there. You can just Google them, both locally and internationally. And I'm sure there are even such services provided by the university. And these, of course, can be very genuine products or services that you pay for. And in a lot of cases, especially the ones provided by your institution, that you can trust in that sense, because it's done by your institution, a legitimate entity that you legitimately believe in and have trust in, are done at a very reasonable price point. And publishers ourselves have also invested in this kind of services that you can utilize or opt for on the platforms itself. So throughout, for example, the submission process, if you're looking for editing services for non-native English speakers, you can utilize and pay for some of these services to improve on your paper, right? But it can also be that, by mimicking this type of companies or services or providers, there can also be people who are trying to, bad actors who are trying to take advantage of you. And what they essentially want is basically access to your content, to your data. And why would they want to do so? Is probably because you may be working on something very sensitive. You could be working on military information. You could be working on the state of the art, for example, semiconductors. And they could deploy many through many methods, including ransomware, or uploading a virus to your file and then turning it back to you while mimicking or pretending to do peer review with you. All of these are potential ways that could influence or negatively impact you if you are not, utilizing the services of the right kind of people or support or providers. So what can you do about it? It's the same. Again, the message is the same. Just like any other help you're going to get, that you're applying for, or just like any other service that you're going to pay for, you will want to check the credentials, testimonies from people you may or may not know. Look at reviews online. Look for the telltale signs that many of which Shen has showed you earlier, about how they interact with you. Do they even speak or write decently? Does it sound like an AI is talking back to you instead of a real person? Look at the email addresses sometimes, or even just ask around. Sometimes your lab mates, your supervisors may have already utilized some of those services, and they are fine and everything seems to work out well. Then those are just again signs or signals that for you to think about and to make sure you make the right decision ultimately. And basically, to close, and this is my last slide, essentially, of everything that you've learned in the last hour or so, is basically to help prevent you from not say failing, but that last hurdle before you get successfully published. And the publication journey is supposed to be a rewarding one, but being rewarding in that sense it's also then means it's not supposed to be easy. If not everyone would have a PhD and everyone would have done it already, right? And the very fact that you have dedicated a lot of your time, a lot of your life, lots of long hours at night and cracking your head about how to write a manuscript, how to do your experiments. These are supposed to be something when you finally achieve it, an achievement in the realist sense. But there will always be pitfalls. And that is why, again, your library has very consciously thought of, today's session and invited us to do our very small part in ensuring that we maybe perhaps partake some, good information to you to help you then avoid these pitfalls. And hopefully in 20 years time, 30 years time, or whenever you decide to publish and end your career one day, your entire journey, you can look back as something that has been truly rewarding for you, and that you've not regretted it because of some bad experiences you may have inadvertently and not to your fault at all, fallen prey to in that sense. So just again, bear in mind that just we have a very pragmatic mindset when looking at academic publishing. It's of course a very noble work, but there will always be bad actors out there trying to pretend and to take advantage of you and your passion to advance science for financial gains and whatnot. And if you can look after yourselves that way and everybody plays their role in the ecosystem, then I'm confident that these things like predatory publishing can be kept at the absolute minimum. So hopefully, with everything you've heard from both of us today, uh, uh, this will add some value to you. At least maybe the next time you see something suspicious, something, an example like what Shen demonstrated earlier on some of her slides, that will just cause you to pause for a moment and then think back to sessions like today to help you prevent you from, inadvertently falling prey to them. So thank you very much. That's all for both our presentations. I would like to thank the library for organizing this, and of course my partner in presentation today, Michelle. These are our emails, and we're going to stop here, and we have some time for Q&A. But what I perhaps will ask the help of Juanita or your colleagues to help us to read out those questions, if any. So please write them down in the chat box, and the library will manage the questions coming in. We'll take a few while we still have time, but if not, you can always write to us in our emails if you want to ask maybe a more personal question. So with that, thank you, and I hand it back over to the library.
Thank you, Mr. Kenyit and Ms. Yanto, for the very interesting and fruitful presentation. We will now begin the Q&A session. Participants are encouraged to submit their questions through the chat box or raise their virtual hands to ask directly. All right. If there are no questions, then we'll proceed. Oh,
Yes, I have a question. Thank you, Mr. and Mr. Ken. I really appreciate all that you shared with us. So I want to ask if one mistakenly publishes in a predatory journal, um, can, even though Mr. has mentioned it a little, but I want to still be completely clear. What if one uh, fine tunes it again and sends it to a competent publishing house to be republished? Is it possible or not? Thank you.
Shen, would you like to take this one?
Yes, I understand from the question is,
Oh,
hello?
yeah, yeah.
Am
We
I
still
still
hear you.
in?
We still hear. Yeah, yeah. We still hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that the question was if he submitted to another party or entity to submit our manuscript to the publishing house. Let me represent Springer Nature,
An improved version, I believe he said. Basically,
improved
improved.
version.
Yeah.
Okay, let me
Yes.
represent Springer Nature
After
first because
retracting it, you improve on it and then send it to another competent publishing house.
I see. Okay, understand. There is no wrong in this. This is allowed, provided just to make sure. May I ask, in this case, are you the one submitting it to the publishing house, or that agent will submit for you?
I am the one.
Okay. Then yeah, it's allowed. There is no problem. And if you are in control, it's more unlikely you would be fall hands into a predatory publishing. But in my presentation, I was emphasizing more in the case that if you are not the one, that means you put the control of the manuscript completely to the hands of another party. They
Okay.
submit on your behalf.
Okay. Thank you
If
so
you
much.
submit, then it's okay. And if it's an improved version, it's allowed. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I think there's a second question in the chat. Maybe I can read it out. Are there best practices for handling cases where institutional research outputs, and I think this means research done by that university or people from that university, are found to be published in predatory journals, particularly in terms of reporting and remediation? So what can they do lah, if they found that some research that they're working on has been published in a predatory journal? What can they do about it? Can they write a cease and desist letter? What are the steps can they do? Should they take legal action? What are your thoughts, Shed?
Personally, I think it's a great question, probably coming more from the library side or knowledge management side. As an account development manager in the company, I lack knowledge, full knowledge of this best practices. Neither at Springer Nature, I have encountered any libraries or existing institution which have gathered those best practices and publish it at the website. All I know is that just to share, like you probably heard of the bill list, right? The bill list is a list of state showing who are those publishing predators. They put the name there, and it was
Allegedly, lah.
generated.
Allegedly.
Yeah, it was generated by a librarian himself named Bill. So I wouldn't say that is one of the best practices, but that is one of the common practice of a person who took initiative, and they tend to put it at their own website. So that is all I could comment on. There is also no, I would say, standard framework in terms of reporting and remediation. But the reporting and remediation normally comes from an external party. So even in our case within Springer Nature, let's see, for example, one of your researcher in UPM was found to publish at a place that they thought it was Springer Nature, but it was not. Springer Nature ourselves rarely would intervene in that case unless it goes into a very exceptional impact or outcome that can harm our own reputation and our own risk, because we perceive that risk has been absorbed by the author in himself. They were the one that conducted that activity. So in terms of remediation and responsibility, they should manage it at their end. So very rare we have anyone in our company to be able to provide the remediation or report the wrongdoer on your behalf. We don't do that. So that's all I could comment on. Yeah.
I can add further, and I think, again, this is just my personal opinion on the matter, but I think remediation is quite difficult, and often any attempts to do so leads to nothing. There are not many cases that I have heard or aware of where if someone has found that their article has been misused or been published on something we would allege as a predatory journal, for example, or a paper mill, that they have been successfully been able to retract it, to get it off the website, because that's usually not the end. That goes against to what these bad actors are trying to do. But of course, you could try to, like I mentioned earlier, to ask them to cease and desist, and ask them to retract it. But I think that also then brings up the issue of basically self-implication, meaning an author would have to, self-implicate himself that he would have fell prey to that scenario. But sometimes taking the necessary action does help, in the sense that you are admitting it happens and you're trying your best to get it done. But I think in really, unfortunately, in most cases, what ends up happening is the work that was lost there is lost lah. It can't be used anymore. And even if you try to, I think for example, like in the suggestion made by the previous person who asked the question, can you modify it and submit again? Ultimately, the editors of another journal, even if it's a legitimate one, would find out that it may have, some portion of it may have been published in a suspicious journal before, and they may take the decision to stay away from it. So then that leads to basically that work, just going down the drain lah. So that again, stands to supports to what we're trying to do, which is making sure that you don't fall into that in the first place. Then Shen, I think there's another question about, apart from Beale's list, are there any websites? Maybe I'll go first, then give it to you. I think first and foremost, we have to say is that I think from a publisher standpoint, it's very subjective and a bit hard for us actually to formally say that the Beale's list is legitimate. It's the be-all, end-all of list, because it's actually a very subjective thing. And like I've also mentioned myself, even big publishers can fall prey, because it's not that the intention of the publisher or the people running the publishing house to do it, but sometimes there are bad actors within the journal's editorial board, or there could be, and maybe not even the entire editorial board, maybe not the editor-in-chief, but someone within the organization who is taking advantage of things. So there are multiple ways to basically do check and balances, but there are no perfect list to say you read this list, confirm, right? So it's still very much a way of check and balance. What do you have to say for this, Shen? Are there anything else apart from Beale's list? You're on mute, Shen. You're on mute.
Sorry. No, I did double check again in the website just now. So it's OSPA and DOAB, as I recall as well, are the two websites and organization where you could check publisher which are credible. It's the other way around, which are credible and you can trust. So I do not know yet of any other lists or or places where there is the one that listed predatory. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, no perfect way to line out in a way that there's no absolute list that you should avoid. There's no absolute list that you can trust in that sense. I think a lot of it depends on you. And there have been also cases whereby journals that have been suspected of being a paper mill, why not, have had a good pass, then went through a period of being suspected and then gets cleaned up and then becomes legitimate again. So that is also the case. So it's hard to say outright because a journal has history in that sense. The next question, how can integrity officers distinguish between intentional misconduct and genuine lack of awareness when dealing with predatory cases, predatory publishing cases? Shen, you want to weigh in? You're mute. Okay, not mute. Go ahead.
Perhaps you comment first.
I think this one is, yeah. So I think how can integrity distinguish, right? I think it's very hard, obviously, because you are dealing with individuals, humans, and as with all authors, your goal is to be published. And nowadays, there's increased pressure, especially if the higher up the rank you go, or your hierarchy in your organization, there will be more pressure to publish. So I think sometimes it's not that people have the purposeful intention of cheating the system, but they find the easiest or the path of least resistance. And I think there's many documented cases where if given the option, you would take the easiest option. And sometimes then that unfortunately leads to predatory publishing. So I think it is, if you see a pattern, like repeated submissions to a suspected or well-known suspected or alleged paper mill, for example, and you look at the work itself and you get consent from his or her peers who are in the same subject matter, and look at the papers that are being published as doesn't make sense, incomplete, wouldn't pass muster at maybe another more reputable journal, then that can be a sign. But again, it's very subjective. So integrity officers have to be very careful. You probably would have a policy that outlines a check and balance process, and that maybe, for example, a single offense wouldn't necessarily showcase motive, right? It could be a mistake, a genuine mistake. So yeah, probably a pattern of intentional mistakes makes more sense. This is just my own thoughts. Anything to add, Shen?
No, I think it's well put. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I think that's it. Don't see any more questions, but all very great questions, all very showcasing that you guys are very much in tune with this topic, and I'm sure it's always on the back of your mind, especially when you're looking at submitting your work. So the best that we can do at times like this is for publishers like Springer Nature is for us to come out here to interact with you all. And admittedly, we're humans too. People working in the journals are humans too. The mistakes will be made, but the belief is that if there is a proper, transparent system, and we adhere to high quality standards that make sense, are logical, then that puts everyone in the best foot to be able to have a positive experience when publishing with the likes of Springer Nature and so on and so on. So we're not claiming we're the only ones, obviously, but I wish you all the best of luck. It's been great having this session with you all. I think very innovative, again, by the library, and shows that they do care about what you guys do and helping you solve a very transient problem. So wish you guys all the best. And Shen, anything else to leave the audience with before we hand over to the library?
No, I thank everyone for paying attention, staying on. I also thank the librarians at UPM for this great session, and also my colleague Ken Yip for his initiative and brainstorming for this session.
Okay, back to you, library. Terima kasih, Buan.
Alright. Thank you, Mr. Kenyip and Ms. Sianto. Then before we wrap up today's webinar, let us create a lasting memory by taking virtual group photo. We kindly request that everyone turn on your cameras, if possible, and share your brightest smile. We will take a few moments to ensure everyone is ready. One, two, three, smile. One more. One, two, three, smile. We will appreciate your cooperation in completing the attendance and evaluation form available in the chat box. The digital certificate of participation will be distributed to the email address provided in the form. Thank you all for joining today's webinar. I hope you found the discussion as interesting as I did. A big thank you to our speaker, Mr. Ken Yip and Ms. Yanto, for sharing their expertise and insights. Your knowledge has truly enhanced our understanding of navigating scholarly publishing, how to avoid predatory publishing. We also appreciate the engagement from our participants. Your questions and active involvement made this session dynamic and interactive. Once again, thank you all for your time and participation. Wishing you success as you put these new insights into action. Stay safe and take care. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.